announcement in court just hours ago upends a murder trial in a case that captured the attention of a nation for the last 2 years.
I'm dumbstruck by the degree of attention this case has gotten, for whatever reason.
An obsessed boss in love with his employee who says he was directed to kill her husband by angels and demons who sounded like Olivia Newton-John and Barry White.
The defendant, ladies and gentlemen, is serving up an insanity sandwich, and he's serving it with a side of French fried lies.
And many suspected he wasn't the only one who should have been on trial. And the question tonight, was the affair with the dead man's wife just in his head or for real out on the dance floor?
They were broking each other. They had a good time.
From this day forward, anyone who looks up the definition of evil would see nothing more than a photograph of Andrea Snyder.
You think she meant to get him to kill her husband?
Who is the real Andrea Snyderman? Grieving widow or black widow? Here's Elizabeth Vargas and David Muir.
Good evening. Tonight, a bombshell development just hours ago in Atlanta. A widow under house arrest about to go on trial for murder in the death of her husband suddenly learns she will not face a murder charge at all. And the family of that husband, that young father gone, are now desperate for the truth.
His widow, until today, charged with murder. To understand the case, we need to go back to when their lives seemed normal, to the start of an ordinary day.
For Rusty Snyderman and his son Ian, it is a routine Thursday morning, breakfast with the family. Then the short drive to drop Ian off for a morning of play at the Dunwoody Prep, a daycare center near Atlanta. But on November 18, 2010, Rusty doesn't notice that he's being followed by a man driving a silver van. And 2-year-old Ian has no way of knowing he is saying goodbye to his father for the last time. As Ian and the other children head to the playground, Rusty Snyderman walks back to his car. The gunman opens fire. 3 shots. Another parent, Chris Lang, watches it unfold from his car just a few feet away.
How far apart were the 2 men?
No more than about 6 feet, I'd say. I mean, it was pretty much point-blank range.
And then a final bullet to Rusty Snyderman's neck, an execution in cold blood.
The barrel was either at or right at his skin when fired. There was actually soot deep into the wound from the projectile.
Assistant District Attorney Don Geary interviewed several eyewitnesses.
They thought it was a movie.
A movie?
They were actually looking around for the cameras. Because understand, in that area, that is just totally foreign.
It was almost surreal, the experience, in that there was no chaos or running or yelling or anything. He just walked back to his van, he got in his van. It looked like it was professional.
The killer escapes, leaving Rusty Snyderman gasping for air on the pavement.
Sounded like a gunshot over here.
A cell phone video captures police and ambulances rushing to the scene.
There was a lot of blood everywhere. We knew that, it was probably some vital organs hit. There was no pulse, and he was unresponsive.
The last thing you think about is dropping off your child at school and something like this happened.
Very, 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 very scary to happen.
4 days later, police still have no idea who killed Rusty or why. His brother Steve reaches out to the community, offering a reward for information.
I'm here today to speak for my brother who can't speak anymore. Our whole family has lost its brightest light, and we don't know why.
Who would have wanted to kill this outgoing young father? Did Rusty have enemies? A secret life? Maybe there's a clue hidden in his past. Rusty Snyderman grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and graduated from Indiana University with his lifelong friend, Josh Golub.
A lot of people consider Rusty, their best friend, and part of that is Rusty's personality. He had a personality that always would, bring you in.
Josh was with Rusty when he met his future wife, Andrea Greenberg.
Hey, I just met this really great girl, this really cute girl. I just remember how excited he was after meeting her.
My name is Rusty Snyderman.
Rusty served as best man at Josh's wedding.
It is my sincere hope that your home will be as filled with as much joy and love and laughter as our college apartment. And you can count it all.
After Rusty earned an MBA at Harvard, the couple moved to the Atlanta suburbs to start a family.
And how much did Rusty love being a dad?
I've never seen him happier than being a dad. I mean, he was a big kid at heart himself, and he just adored his kids.
At 36 years old, Rusty had a lot to be proud of. He had created a comfortable life for his family as a successful wealth manager and consultant. To their neighbors, Rusty and Andrea appeared to be a happy couple.
They were very, very friendly, wanting to fit into the neighborhood, just really easy to talk to, just, you know, nice people. They're the kind of people you want to be your neighbor to move in.
Rusty was thrilled when Andrea took a job at General Electric. It gave him time to develop a new business and spend more time with his son Ian and 5-year-old daughter Sophia.
They missed their mommy during the day. I don't think they argued over the fact that she was working. She always wanted to have something to do. She enjoyed working.
Andrea's boss at GE was a man named Hemi Newman. Newman was an engineer and a powerful executive overseeing 5,000 employees. Attorney Esther Panich.
He was the smartest man in the room. He had an air about him of arrogance, and he knew best. It was all about Hemi.
Andrea Snyderman caught his eye, and by November 2010, she was spending more and more days on the road with her boss. After business trips took them from Lake Tahoe to the Edinburgh Castle in Scotland, Hemi developed a deep infatuation with Andrea.
Hemi could have been obsessed with Andrea. That doesn't mean Andrea reciprocated the feelings.
She completely denies it.
But in Greenville, South Carolina, bartender Christine Oliveira thought they were more than co-workers.
To me, they looked like a couple, like a newlywed couple, like, you know, out on a date and enjoying themselves. He grabbed her rear end, pressing her to him, and she accepted. And, you know, towards the end, she kissed him. So that made him really happy. And they left kissing each other and embraced.
Back home, Rusty had no idea how intimate their secret relationship had become, or that there was a bizarre connection between the affair and an event that happened just days before he was murdered. Rusty noticed a suspicious man lurking in his backyard. He called 911.
He's running. I think he has a gun in his back pocket, and now he's running away.
In the middle of the call, Rusty paused to console his son.
I know, but I didn't get your water bottle. I'm sorry. I don't know who the hell he is, and I don't want him by my house. He was wearing a hat and earmuffs, black mustache.
Rusty was unaware that this strangely dressed man was a determined killer with a detailed plan to take his life. It was only a matter of time. 8 days later, at the Dunwoody Prep, he would be successful. Rusty Snyderman was dead.
When we come back, on the trail of the killer, police begin to wonder, could there be more than one? Stay with us.
December 2010, 4 weeks after Rusty Snyderman was inexplicably gunned down in front of the Dunwoody Prep preschool, police are no closer to finding the identity of the killer.
Everyone was thinking professional style hit, so of course people were thinking, is it financial? Was it a business deal that had, gone badly? Was it, a love triangle? Was it an affair?
To find a possible motive for the shooting, police turned to Rusty Snyderman's wife, Andrea. When asked if anybody had a romantic interest in her, she mentions Hemi Newman, Andrea's supervisor at the nearby GE Energy Complex.
Her response was that her boss, Hemi Newman, had made a pass out of her, but it was on a business trip and it was some time ago and nothing else had happened, and dismissed it.
But what Andrea Snyderman didn't tell police was that in fact she and Newman were spending long trips together on the road.
They went on the dance floor and they were groping each other. They had a good time.
Police say Snyderman steered them away from Newman as a possible suspect.
She never said anything about Hemi Newman to make us believe that she thought he could have anything to do with it.
Indeed, Newman would appear to be an unlikely culprit. He attended Rusty Snyderman's funeral, pouring dirt on the grave and offering condolences to Rusty's parents.
He says, "Isn't this a tragedy?" And I said, "Yeah, it is."
Meanwhile, detectives make their first breakthrough. Enhanced video from the school's security camera reveals that the getaway vehicle was a late model Kia Sedona minivan. Police track a Kia van to this Enterprise rental car lot and make a startling discovery. The person who rented the Sedona during the period of the murder was none other than Hemi Newman.
Andrea's boss.
The van linked to Hemi Newman was the home run or the break that we were waiting for.
On January 4th, investigators summoned Newman to the Dunwoody Police Department for questioning.
We got that van on video the day Rusty shot. I'm giving you every opportunity. You got a heart, you got a soul. You were there when Rusty got shot. Now, Hemi, you were there. You got it, man. Up. The jig is up. You're our guy. I don't see how you can place me there. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not there. I don't own a gun. I can't explain the van.
You're going to tell us on stack Bibles, I did not shoot Rusty.
I was not there. I did not pull the trigger on the gun and shot Rusty Snyder.
He was very calm, unusually calm. Hemi Newman was much different than most people who commit murder.
Over the course of the 5-hour interrogation, police make it clear that they believe Newman had a fatal attraction to Andrea Snyderman, that she was the motive for the killing.
She's going on these trips with you. She's a very attractive woman. She's looking pretty. And you gotta feel bad about that. Jealousy gets in the heart, though. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Jealousy gets in the heart.
Newman is arrested and charged with Rusty Snyderman's murder. Meanwhile, prosecutors strengthen their case. They track Newman's phone records to this man, Jan De Silva. He says he sold a .40 caliber Bersa handgun like this one to Newman just 1 month before the murder.
He seemed really normal, and just a person like what he told me, that he just needed a gun for just home defense.
Even more damning, De Silva says Newman contacted him again a month later, this time to try to buy his silence.
He told me that there was a problem with the gun, that he had to get rid of it. He just said to me, like, don't ever have a mistress.
So was Andrea Snyderman the mistress of Hemi Newman? When police put the question to her after his arrest, she says any affair between herself and Hemi Newman was only in his head. But someone else was convinced it was all too real. Newman's wife of 22 years, Relly.
Had she suspected he was cheating before the murder?
Yes. She had suspected he was cheating soon after Andrea started working there. He would take her calls late at night. He would start hiding the phone, turning it over. The same kind of things you read in a magazine, top 10 signs your spouse is cheating. He had them all.
Even though Andrea was a married mother of 2, Hemi's wife was convinced there was something serious between them. She filed for separation. Her lawyer, Esther Panich, uncovered documents that traced an extraordinary amount of communication at all hours between Hemi and Andrea.
In the 6 months before the murder, there were over 1,400 cell phone calls and texts.
Is it possible they were discussing work?
It's possible, but when the emails say, I want to marry you, I don't know how many bosses and their employees have that kind of communication.
But does Andrea Snyderman's relationship with Newman have anything to do with her husband's murder? It is the question lawyers will ask when she is under oath in the trial of Hemi Newman.
Andrea Snyderman.
And what she will say on the stand will surprise everyone.
Were you and the defendant romantically involved?
When 2020 returns. The crime appalled the city of Atlanta. A father shot dead outside a daycare. A year later, high drama at the DeKalb County Courthouse as accused killer Hemi Newman faces trial. The defense begins with a stunning admission.
On November the 18th, 2010, Hemi Newman shot and killed Rusty Snyderman.
Newman pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. There follows a dizzying array of bizarre explanations and purported apparitions as he tries to prove he didn't know right from wrong. It was madness that drove him to kill, his attorneys say. Madness and a woman, Rusty Snyderman's wife.
He fell for Andrea. If you want to call it infatuation, if you want to call it love, he fell for her.
Newman tells psychiatrists voices in his head are telling him to do evil things.
I can imagine your reaction when you first heard
his story of the angels and demons who appeared to him.
We laughed.
Sounding like Barry White and Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. That was our reaction. This is absolutely ridiculous.
It's more than love.
The Barry White demon urged Newman to kill himself, but another voice sounding like Olivia Newton-John told him to kill Rusty Snyderman because Rusty was a danger to his 2 children.
And said the angel told him he had to protect the children and he had to kill Rusty.
But defense doctors say the successful engineer was bipolar, deranged by delusions, and finally driven over the edge by a head-over-heels infatuation with Andrea Snyderman.
There is adultery that occurs. It's a huge leap to murder somebody.
You have Hemi who's about to file bankruptcy. You have Hemi who's unhappy with his wife. He wants a change. The only problem is that the life that he wants is being occupied by someone else.
His lawyers paint a harrowing picture of Hemi's childhood, a father who was a survivor of Auschwitz who physically abused his children, and a mother who was largely absent. But prosecutor Don Gary tells the jury there is a simpler explanation.
The man wanted someone else's wife, so he killed her husband. He got caught, and all of a sudden he's insane.
Hemi's lawyers say as Hemi and Andrea worked and traveled together, she turned his illness and infatuation to her own purposes.
You think she meant to get him to kill her husband?
Yes, absolutely. This is clearly a situation here where one person was mentally ill, okay, and the other person was aware of it and was calculating and was manipulative.
Something sort of our testimony here to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. That other person is Rusty's grieving widow, Andrea Snyderman, the star witness in the trial of her husband's killer. And suddenly, she is on the defensive.
Did the defendant ever express his feelings for you?
Yes.
And
Andrea says Newman wrote her a poem.
The poem insinuated that he thought I was beautiful.
do you have any idea why the defendant would have these feelings toward you?
I think I'm a pretty nice person. I'm a very caring person.
Were you and the defendant romantically involved?
No.
Prosecutors rattle Andrea with chains of unbusinesslike emails from Hemi.
It's about how you felt when we looked at the stars in Tahoe, when we woke up Friday morning in Denver, when we walked out of the restaurant on Thursday, when you took my hand and nestled your head on my shoulder.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Did what happen?
Did you wake up together in Denver and Tahoe?
No.
Andrea says she rejected numerous advances by Hemi, but didn't mention them to her husband.
Did you ever tell Rusty about the poem or the defendant's feelings towards you?
No.
Why not?
I really thought that I could handle it.
Hemi even emailed a proposal. Marry me, it says. Think about it. Be with me forever. Andrea says she can explain.
I viewed it very much as a silly boy email. He was being silly and stupid, and in fact, I spoke with him about that email at work in person and told him to stop.
Andrea admits she cared about Hemi as a friend.
He managed to get me to care about him, and that's actually the point. He was very good at that, very good at manipulating everyone around him to feel bad for him.
Andrea says she allowed Newman into her room at hotels when they traveled together, but says that was before she realized he was stalking her.
Did he stalk you from inside your own room?
Stalking can take on many different meanings.
So that's a yes.
He was there to spend time with me,
In your
evidently.
room? In your room?
Yeah, he did not share a room with me. Was he in my room? He might have been for a little while, but didn't share a room with me.
All right.
When the defense attorneys get their turn to question her, they suggest if Hemi was stalking Andrea, she made it easy for him.
The stalker that you've now testified about, you picked him up at the airport.
Yep.
You flew home with him.
That's correct.
You changed seats to sit next to him.
That's how we always traveled.
After a trip to Greenville, South Carolina with Hemi, they have a revealing email exchange in which Andrea says, "I now have to repent."
I turned to the second page of that email.
Yep.
Hemi Newman says, "Please never forget how much I love you." And how did you respond?
I know, but so do other people. I betrayed them all. I'm not sure how to deal with that for now, but my burden, not yours.
What happened in Greenville, man?
We were holding each other's hands, and that's it. It may sound worse than it is, but to me, that was a betrayal.
What did you think when she took the stand?
And if I were her lawyer, I would have flung myself out the window. How he could have let her go up there and not take the fifth, I have no idea.
But what qualities did you see in her on the stand that day?
Combative,
Arrogant.
angry.
Yeah, I mean, the tone of the whole thing was, how dare you challenge me? I mean, the most telling quote of the whole thing was at the end of Don Gary's redirect, when he said, "Why did you lead the police down the rabbit hole?" And she looks at him and says,
Have you seen what's happened to my life?
Have you seen what's happened to Rusty? And Don, bless his heart, said, "Have you seen what happened to Rusty?"
Have you seen
what's happened to Rusty?
Have you noticed what's happened to my life since Hemi was murdered? Since Hemi murdered my husband?
The suggestion of an affair is one thing, murder is another. When we come back, the courtroom is rocked by revelations about what Andrea knew about her husband's shooting.
That was a bombshell. That was a bombshell.
At that point, did they tell you or indicate to you Rusty was in fact dead?
Yep.
Okay, is that the first time you found out he was dead?
Yep.
And you found out he was shot?
Yep.
And as the story unfolds here tonight, we want to know from you, what do you think of Andrea Snyderman? Do you believe her?
Tweet us your answer. Use our hashtag ABC2020. We'll have more when we return. Central to Hemi Newman's trial was the question of his affair with the murder victim's wife, Andrea Snyderman. How much was real? How much had Hemi imagined?
Did Hemi tell you right away that he'd been having an affair with Andrea?
Yes, he would say, "I had an affair with her, I think."
But before he'd been brought into custody and decided to plead insanity, Hemi had been more clear.
He said that, quote, "she gave in." He never said we had sex. All he said was that she gave in. And he said that it was great.
Melanie White was the Newmans' realtor and became a close friend of Hemi's. She says that for months before that climactic incident, he had been calling her and obsessing over Andrea.
I quit answering the phone. I was so tired of hearing him whine and moan. He was like a schoolboy. He was infatuated. It was like puppy love.
And when the smitten Hemi took Andrea to London, Melanie White heard all the details.
They were laying on the bed together, they watched a movie, they were groping and making out or whatever. I said, "Hemi, you know you shouldn't be doing that." And I really don't want to hear about it. But this infatuation that he had with this woman, it overcame him.
He felt that he and Andrea were like soul mates.
The defense hoped the jury would believe just how overcome Hemi was, arguing in essence that he was crazy in love.
There's nothing wrong with him. He's faking, or in other words, malingering.
The prosecution maintained that the affair proves just the opposite. Not that Hemi was insane, but crazy like a fox in a carefully plotted conspiracy. Both sides take the affair as a given. Even though Andrea Snyderman denies it, 8 other witnesses confirm it.
But nobody was in the bedroom. Nobody saw them having sex when they were traveling on the road.
It's more of the totality of the circumstances. You have witnesses who have no dog in this fight, who said that they saw them groping and making out.
There's no doubt in your mind adultery was happening.
No doubt in my mind adultery was happening.
And many following the trial wonder if an affair was the only thing Andrea was trying to hide. There are also troubling questions about when she knew that her husband had been shot. She testified that the school only told her there had been an emergency and that Rusty was taken to the hospital. She raced over to the school without first doing what many think would have been natural.
How many times did you call Rusty?
Call Rusty?
Rusty.
0 times.
Why didn't you call Rusty?
Because they just told me something had happened to Rusty. What are the chances that he's going to be answering his cell phone?
They didn't tell you what happened to Rusty.
You have a question?
She looked annoyed. It was really incredible to see someone who should be a grieving widow look aggravated at having to come to the trial of her husband's murderer.
Andrea testified she didn't know her husband had been shot until she got to the hospital at about 11 a.m.
They took me into what I call the death room.
Okay, so they
I
told
sat
you...
in a chair, and someone, I have no idea who they are, came over and said that he came in with multiple gunshot wounds and that he was dead. I don't remember anything they said after that.
Okay, so you found...
I fell to the floor.
You found out at the hospital that Rusty had been shot.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then in the most heartbreaking testimony that has been heard so far, Rusty's father got on the stand.
My name is Donald Snyderman.
And said that Andrea called him at about 9:36 in the morning, and the words that he said shook the courtroom.
Andrea called us, and she called and said Rusty had been shot. She was so sorry, and that she was going to Dunwoody Prep to find out what had happened.
And are you sure that she told you that Rusty had been shot?
Yes, sir.
There was no way to know at that point what had happened to Rusty.
Is it possible that the Snydermans misheard Andrea?
Well, if you don't accept that the Snydermans, who will forever have this statement seared into their brain, her former best friend and a coworker corroborated the same statement.
That was a bombshell. That was a bombshell. That was the first time people in the community really had something concrete to wrap their head around and say, maybe she knew, maybe she was in on it.
Speculation was further inflamed by the fact that Andrea Snyderman stood to collect $2 million from Rusty's life insurance, a sum that might have been tempting to a financially strapped Hemi Newman.
Do you think Andrea Snyderman had any plans to spend the rest of her life with Hemi Newman?
No.
$2 million later, she's free of her husband, she's free of Hemi Newman.
To quote one of the lawyers in this trial, they believe Andrea Snyderman played Hemi Newman like a yo-yo, manipulated him into committing this murder.
Yes.
When we come back,
this guy's bizarre. This twisted little man.
Both the defense and the prosecution turn up the heat, and not just on the killer. They suggest Andrea might be a black widow, not a grieving one.
He's not crazy. He's a co-conspirator with the demon that he was cheating with, the demon that defiled her marriage.
Andrea Snyderman is an adulterer and a tease and a master manipulator.
See what's next. Is this the face of madness? And is this the face of evil? Those are the questions facing the jury at the trial of Hemi Newman. He's admitted killing Rusty Snyderman, but the central question remains, was Hemi crazy or just crazy in love with Rusty's wife, Andrea? 3 psychiatric witnesses for the defense agree Hemi Newman was insane at the time of the murder.
When he shot Mr. Snyderman, he was going through a manic episode.
He was somewhat odd and had some weird magical thinking.
That he suffered from bipolar disorder and at the time was manic and delusional.
The defense witness, Dr. Tracy Marks, says Andrea also shares some of the blame for what she calls the explosion of madness in Hemi's head.
Whether it was intentional or unintentional was that her interactions with him kind of planted the seed for his delusions.
Prosecutors say there were no delusions, just a methodical, premeditated plot to kill Rusty.
He stalked him. Which gun to use? Well, let me see. Should I stab him? Should I shoot him? Should I run over with the car?
And what was happening in Andrea's head? She denies an affair, but even her former close friend Shayna Citron didn't believe her.
Did Andrea admit or deny an affair with her boss at that time after the murder?
Denied it.
When she told you no, did you believe her?
No, but my heart really wanted to believe her.
But you didn't believe her?
No.
Thank you, ma'am.
Citron's testimony led to a jaw-dropping moment of courtroom drama. When she left the stand, Andrea stood and gave her a long, warm hug in front of the jury. But outside the courtroom where the jury couldn't see, Andrea approached her again. Citron's lawyer, Jay Abt, witnessed what happened next.
She tells her, look, I understand you had to do what you had to do, but now you're going to have to live with what I'm going to do. She says it in an ominous way, and then she gives Shayna another kiss, but this kiss, it was like the kiss of death.
As they close their cases, the prosecution and the defense have one thing in common: their scathing accusations against the victim's wife.
The gun in this case was in Hemi's hand, but the trigger, I respectfully suggest, was pulled by Andrea Snyderman.
Hemi didn't hide his crime from Andrea because Andrea already knew.
Adulterer, tease, liar, and master manipulator.
As for Hemi, the prosecution says he was anything but insane.
Hemi Newman killed Rusty Snyderman because he wanted his wife, because he wanted his money, because he wanted his life. And that makes him guilty, that makes him guilty, that makes him guilty all day, every day, because he is sane and he knew the difference between right and wrong.
District Attorney Robert James mocks any evidence of Hemi's manic episodes.
They would have us believe that he's insane because he's having a good time at the club. And Andrea's doing this dance for him, and she's, you know, and they're groping and they're grinding and they're getting it on and they're kissing and hugging. Now, he's supposed to be insane because he says, isn't it great? Isn't it great? Isn't it great? Yes, it's great. Of course it's great. He's having an affair. He's about to go back to the room and do the horizontal mumbo. Yes, it's great. What man in America wouldn't be like, whoa, I'm about to have sex. It's great. Of course he's having a good time. If that makes him insane, then half the men walking down the street are insane.
He similarly dismisses the description of Hemi's alleged abuse of childhood.
Wham, wham, wham. We should all have it so bad. I got smacked with a belt every now and then. Wham, wham, wham.
Both sides end with a passionate plea for justice.
Hemi was used. Hemi was manipulated.
Good men don't sleep with other men's wives. Good men don't do what he did. Good men do not do this.
A year and a half after Rusty was shot dead,
Deputy Moore, would you please bring in the jury, please?
There is a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant as to count 1, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but mentally ill.
It is a win for the prosecution. Hemi Newman will go to prison, not a mental hospital. As the judge gets ready to issue his sentence, Newman stands and for the first time speaks in court.
I'm so sorry for their loss.
Hemi Newman's apology is too little, too late. He is sentenced to life behind bars with no chance ever of parole. Andrea Snyderman issued a statement saying she was, quote, grateful for and relieved by the verdict, and describing her husband as an amazing man. She has denied any involvement in his murder. But Hemi's lawyers still believe the wrong person is paying the price for Rusty's death.
I think that he was a pawn in her hand, and she's guilty.
You think she belongs in prison?
I do.
I believe she should be charged with murder.
You believe she's guilty of murder?
I believe that she participated in the death of her husband. Now, what I believe and what I can prove are two completely different things at times.
When we come back, Andrea Snyderman arrested. But what can the prosecution prove? A dramatic reversal in the case before the trial has even begun.
Next, the prosecutor began to gather evidence for a new case, a murder case against Andrea Snyderman.
We sat down and said, do we go forward? Do we have enough evidence?
An arrest, an ankle bracelet, and an astonishing turn of events before she goes on trial. When we return.
Hemi Newman, convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but anyone who thought that was the end of it was wrong.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jovita Moore.
I'm Justin Farmer, and officers arrested Andrea Snyderman today at her family's home in Putnam County.
Within 6 months of the Newman trial, Andrea Snyderman was indicted for murder and arrested.
She is facing charges, including the murder of her husband, Rusty Snyderman.
In layman's terms, if you help, you can be charged like the person that did it.
Friends and family of murder victim Rusty Snyderman would not rest until his widow was brought to justice.
Do you believe she actually conspired to have Rusty shot and killed?
We don't know how she's involved, but she's involved. And we need to know, that's why this investigation needs to continue. We need to know those answers, and we need to know those answers soon. How can we have any peace when we don't know the truth?
New at 5, investigative reporter Jody Fleischer here now with what's significant about that.
Investigative reporter Jody Fleischer covers the story for Atlanta ABC station WSB.
She hired some of the best, most well-known defense lawyers in DeKalb County. They immediately, from day one, started attacking the indictment publicly.
Our defense is the state's case is simply based on an absolutely incorrect assumption of guilt, and it's not based on evidence.
Briefly jailed, Snyderman's phone calls, which she may not have realized were recorded, reveal one thing worrying her. Not the case, but casting which actress should play her when Hollywood comes calling. She was thinking of Miss Congeniality, too.
Okay, everybody, I would love to stay and chat, but I have to go pick out my outfits for the press conference.
She thought that Sandra Bullock would be good, but that she was a little too old to play Andrea.
Sorry, sir.
After 3 weeks in jail, Snyderman got bail.
Anything you want to say just about how much you're looking forward to seeing your children? What these 3 weeks have been like without your mom?
Then, under house arrest, ankle bracelet and all, for most of a year, living with her parents and her children, Snyderman has been waiting to go on trial for the murder of her husband. But that will not happen. In a courtroom in Atlanta today, at what was supposed to be a routine hearing, the case imploded.
Make a motion in all cross counts 1, 2, and 3 of the indictment.
Mr. James, the way it's listed, count 1 is malice murder, count 2 is felony murder. You say count 3 is aggravated assault.
That is accurate, Judge.
The charges that she was directly involved in her husband's murder, tonight, they are gone.
Andrea Snyderman will no longer face charges for the murder of her husband.
I believe that it would be unjust and unethical for the district attorney of this county to go forward on a charge that I am not 100% sure someone is guilty of.
For nearly a year, we've been hearing from prosecutors that they can make this case, and now they say they can't. At the 11th hour, just days from jury selection, they say, we don't really have it after all.
Snyderman still faces several charges, mostly for allegedly lying to police and on the witness stand.
We're going to start on Monday, and we're going to stay here until we finish. We're in recess. All rise.
Oh, it's a huge victory for the defense. They have been saying from day one that she was not involved in planning this murder. And now it appears prosecutors can't prove that she was.
Don Geary helped prosecute Hemi Newman. He now works for a different DA.
It is not uncommon to discover things after indictment. Matter of fact, it's almost common. That makes your case either better or worse in some aspect. And a prosecutor doing justice adjusts. And if it's the right thing to do, to drop a charge.
The one man prosecutors believe could implicate Andrea Snyderman has steadfastly refused to cooperate. Hemi Newman is keeping his silence tonight in prison. These developments, a final piece of bad news for the Snyderman family.
They believed that Andrea played a role and they wanted justice. And now they feel like they're not going to get that.
When we met the family following the last trial, they told us there was one thing they wanted, even more than justice. That was for the memory of their son, Rusty, to live on.
In my dreams, he comes waltzing through the door, just like he always did.
We miss him. He was the light in our life.
He had so much more to offer the world. And the world is so much poorer because he's not here.
And so much poorer, of course, are Rusty's young children, who are now living only with their mother and without their father.
What will you tell Sophia and Ian about their dad?
That he loved them so, he wanted nothing but the best for them. Rusty's motto was to dream big, and I hope that those two will dream big.
Of course, we'll continue to follow developments in the Andrea Snyderman trial for the charges that do remain. We'll keep you up to date on our website at abcnews.com/2020.
And that is 2020 for this Friday night. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.